Episode 1 of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off begins with Scott waking up from a dream he had about the girl of his dreams. He converses with his roommate Wallace for a bit and leaves his apartment to play music with his bandmates. After, he attends a house party with his friends and notices a girl that looks like the one from his dreams. He tries engaging in small talk with her, but it doesn't go smoothly.
Are you real?
Did you just ask me if I was real?
No, I was talking to someone else. Bye.
Scott leaves and bumps into Julie Powers, who questions why he's at her party. Julie informs Scott that the girl he spoke to is Ramona Flowers and shares background details about her. However, she tells Scott she doesn't want him to converse with her. Scott returns home to rent a DVD from Netflix since Julie told him Ramona works for the company. He waits for Ramona to arrive at his apartment. Ramona arrives, hands him the DVD, and attempts to leave. Scott stops her and asks if she's the girl from his dreams. Ramona says it's possible since there's a space subway in his head. Scott changes the subject and asks Ramona if she'd like to hang out with him later. Ramona accepts. The two meet up at night and Ramona reveals why she decided to move to Toronto. The two discuss their different occupations, the weather, and their hobbies for a bit. While that's happening, a man observes them from an undisclosed location and mentions something about the game starting soon.
The game has begun.
The two head to Ramona's apartment to get out of the snowstorm. Scott wanders into Ramona's room while she's changing, and the two end up kissing each other. Before they get more intimate with each other, Ramona stops Scott. However, she tells him she reserves the right to change her mind about them having intercourse whenever she feels at the right time. Meanwhile, we get introduced to Matthew, Ramona's first evil ex-boyfriend. He meets up with Gideon, the leader of the League of Evil Exes. Gideon informs Matthew about Scott and shares insight about his affiliation with Ramona. Gideon reveals Scott's possibly dating a high schooler, and Matthew learns Scott hasn't told her yet. Gideon shares information about Scott's fighting experience with Matthew. Despite being a skilled combatant, Matthew argues he can defeat Scott. In the morning, Scott informs Ramona about his band and invites her to attend one of their nightly concerts. Ramona promises to stop by. Scott returns home and tells Wallace about his time with Ramona. Wallace tells Scott to end his relationship with Knives. Wallace tells Scott that he received a letter in the mail. The letter happens to be from Matthew, who challenges him to a battle. However, Scott doesn't take the letter seriously and chucks it. Knives arrive at the concert and we get introduced to Scott's sister, Stacy. Before they can tell Knives that Scott plans to break up with her, she notices Scott from a distance and calls out to him. Scott sees Knives and Ramona heading in his direction and flees backstage. While his bandmates panic over another band flaking out on them, Scott monitors Ramona and Knives. Although Steven thinks they should cancel their performance, Scott tells them they should go out and try their best. Scott and his bandmates play their song. Matthew crashes the concert and attempts to harm Scott. Scott blocks his attack. Matthew informs Scott who he is and is baffled that Scott ignored his letter. He tells Scott what was written in the letter. Matthew explains Ramona has 7 evil exes, each more powerful than the last. If Scott wants to date Ramona, he must defeat each one. She tells him she never took it seriously and delves into her history with Matthew. She states Matthew possesses strong mystical abilities while she has incredible strength, and they teamed up to defeat Jocks, who were after her for romantic purposes. Matthew and Scott throw a punch at each other, resulting in Scott losing the battle and getting turned into coins.